the Justice Department told the CIA and President Truman and eventually Congress that Nicole Abed was part of the anti-Nazi resistance. Now, here's a guy who murdered Simon Wiesenthal's mother, whose Ukrainian Gestapo, called the Služba Bezpečnosti, murdered hundreds of thousands of Jews, Poles, his fellow Ukrainians. This guy was a monster. The Justice Department created a whole fictional biography for the guy. And so here I am, sticking my neck out. I quit the Justice Department. I go on 60 Minutes. And we had a great time. You know, Congress was outraged. They demanded hearings. Mike Wallace got the Emmy Award. My family got the death threats. Yeah, and when we finally get around to the hearings, the Justice Department fixed one of the guys, the committee chairman, so that I could not testify in executive session. That meant I couldn't tell any of the classified files. I couldn't tell about Nicola Abed. It wasn't until recently that I discovered how complete the lies were. So the Justice Department itself bears substantial responsibility for the protection of Nazi war criminals in America and for the entry of senior Nazi war criminals whose visas were personally signed by the Attorney General. So, yeah, a couple of those Attorney Generals probably should have gone to prison as well.
And so everything you saw is part of the larger pattern of the media refusing to report on what's really going on. Clandestine files can't be opened or reported on. Your book can't get reviewed for 30 years. Justice won't prosecute the people. What are we going to do? How are we going to make it to the future in terms of all the criminals working within the system hide behind the National Security Act or hide behind, you know, anything they can use to their advantage, but the whistleblowers like yourself are prevented from coming forward or ignored? Or how do we fight back against this?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, in the long run, the people that classified all this stuff have stuck the dagger in their own hearts. Because sooner or later, all of the files will be declassified. Now, Congress said to all the spy agencies, declassify all your Nazi files, and this time has gone by. But 1/3 of all the Nazi records are still kept in secret vaults. Want to know why? Because there were files that came from the British. And the British rule was 75 years have to elapse before their files could be released. So sometime starting between 2015 and 2025, we're going to see a whole torrent of Nazi files coming out in London and in Washington that are going to shock people. So I just tried to preserve as much as I could so that future historians will be able to find a path of the files, make sense of them, how they work. Because these guys left a written record of their crimes. Every time they censored something out of one of my books, it was admitting that what I was saying was true. For example, we routinely wiretap all American phone conversations, all of them, every day. It's an electronic vacuum cleaner. And then someone from the British Secret Service sits down at an NSA computer and decides which names to search for. So we can literally pull a conversation out where the word Israel is mentioned and find anyone that's talking about it. But when Congress asks, or the judges ask, you know, both sides can truthfully swear that we aren't spying on our own people, and they're not. Well, they're spying on the other guy's people, then swapping information.
It's an exchange.
It's an exchange. The Americans use the GCHQ computers to spy on the British people, and the British Secret Service uses NSA to spy on the American people. Who needs search warrants? So the Bill of Rights is just, a typo. It doesn't mean anything anymore. And this cover-up has gone on too long. That's got to stop. And, you know, this whole thing that began with a cover-up of the Nazi money, using national security to cover up the movement of Nazi money and the migration of Nazi businessmen, that's going to haunt the very corporations that began that. Corporations are people in America. Well, We're the only country in the world that treats corporations as people. But people can be executed for their crimes. And I think there's a reasonable chance that when all of these files come out, our kids are going to look at the Rockefeller companies and the Harriman companies and say, you guys don't deserve to be in business. We're going to dissolve your corporations and give the stock to the victims. I think that would be justice. I think it would be financial justice to actually, break up these corporations and sell the pieces. Benefit the Veterans Retirement Fund. God knows the VA.
But there's a big challenge, too, because the apparatuses they built are offshore. They have loophole after loophole. It's very sophisticated companies they have now.
All of them are here in America, and all the evidence is going to show how it worked. It's too late to destroy the files. The guys that did this are dead, and their successors in the corporations don't even know where all the pieces fit. So one of the ironies of the classification system is that it has preserved very well the fingerprints of crime and linking back to the corporations in America that made a profit off World War II on the wrong side of the war.
It'd be very interesting if it all comes out. I wonder what the people would think if they ever actually sat down and read it. And
I think the people are going to say that we fought World War II to make America safe for Nazi retirement or Rockefeller investments. I think the Republican Party is going to take a big hit.
Yeah, I respect that you say it's a Republican Party thing, but I just don't see it when you see the connections between union banking and between Rockefeller and so many other entities. It all looks very integrated to me. At the corporate level, I could see, but I see the corporate level pursuing its own agenda.
Yeah, I think what you had was you had both Democrats and Republicans that had invested in Germany in the 20s and 30s and then panicked and collaborated with Hitler in the 40s and then tried to hide their crimes in the 50s under clouds of national security. And the Dulles brothers, who came to power in the Eisenhower administration, they actually did more harm than good to the investors by classifying their crimes. So maybe there'll be some justice. Maybe it's too late for justice, but it's not too late for the truth. And if we find out what really happened, with all the movement of this money back in the 20s, my God, if these guys could fund Hitler and Stalin and get away with it, what could they be doing now? And I have a pretty good idea what they're doing now.
Please tell us.
One of the Nazi groups that we funded and protected after World War II were the Arab Nazis. And this was a huge, successful project of the Third Reich, of the Abwehr, the German intelligence service. The Muslim Brotherhood was a proxy arm of Nazi intelligence. They were supposed to be an underground army, 500,000 secret Nazi members working for the Third Reich. And they did try various coups, for example, in Iraq during World War II, that was crushed. But there were Arab Nazis, there were about 750,000 of them at war's end, and none of them were ever punished because the British Secret Service guys like Kim Philby and McLean made Egypt a safe haven for all the Arab Nazis. They brought them back to Cairo. Even the German officers that ran these programs were given Arab names and converted to Islam. So the Muslim Brotherhood, though, was a real threat. They knocked off the king of Egypt, and they were a threat when the new secular regime came in the 50s. They were expelled. By then, the Dulles brothers had come to power under their gullible dupe Eisenhower. Mm-hmm. And the Dulles brothers convinced the Saudis to resettle the Muslim Brotherhood, all the Arab Nazis, and put them in Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis said, well, why not? The Saudis were pro-Nazi during World War II. And the Egyptian Nazis, the rest of the Arab Nazis, at least were literate. So the Saudis put them to work as school teachers. And the Arab Nazis became the leaders of the madrasas. You had a perfect storm of Saudi religious bigotry called Wahhabism or Salafism and Nazi racism. Young men like Osama bin Laden were literally tutored by Nazis. His personal tutor was the brother of the chief Nazi propagandist for the Muslim Brotherhood. But the idea for the Dulles brothers was that we would keep the Arab Nazis as a proxy army to fight the Arab communists during the Cold War. And every once in a while, they'd take the Arab Nazis out of the closet for one purpose or another. The last time we took the Arab Nazis out was when Vice President Bush sent them off to Afghanistan to recruit a new generation of freedom fighters. We actually had World War II Arab Nazis coming to America to recruit mujahideen, the freedom fighters, to go to Afghanistan. We actually built, through the Muslim Brotherhood, a separate terrorist organization that was not controlled by CIA, as the conventional wisdom has, or by the U.S. government. It was run by the Saudis and the Pakistanis, but funded with American money. But no one knew the money was going through these old Nazi conduits. And so when the war was over, and America said, oh, we won in Afghanistan, we threw the commies out, we went home and left this huge army of the second generation of Arab Nazis in the field. And, you know, they formed a base, the Arab word for which is Al-Qaeda. Okay? And if you think about it, Al-Qaeda and the Nazis had identical goals. They were against democracy, Britain, America, Western culture, Jews. They are very much second-generation Nazis. And one of the reasons we're fighting Al-Qaeda today is because we never finished the job against the Arab Nazis after World War II. They were protected first by the British Secret Service and then by the Dulles brothers in their intelligence service. And it's a horror story that's coming back to haunt us. The Muslim Brotherhood has now gained power through the ballot in Egypt and is threatened to overthrow a whole crescent of states that are tending to go Islamist in the next election. So we have Islamist extremists. And please understand, these guys are not about Islam. The Salafists are to Islam as the Ku Klux Klan is to Christianity. And that's why the Nazis only recruited the extreme groups like the Salafis to join the Muslim Brotherhood. So it is wrong to say that this is Islam. Islam is a very pacifistic, genial, sort of anything-goes religion, particularly among the Sufis. But what we have now in the Muslim Brotherhood is a very well-organized group of extreme cultists. Think as if the Ku Klux Klan had taken over Texas. And that's what's happened in Egypt. That's what's going to be happening all across the Middle East. And that's the legacy of the Dulles brothers.
But Mr. Loftus, the whole thing is a tangled web. We're now partnered with Al-Qaeda in Libya, now in Syria. The whole Arab Spring had a covert Western uprising to it. And